Good day and welcome to Psych Sense, where we make sense of mental health. I'm Ken Mallon, your host, and today we're going to be talking about eating disorders. Later I'll get into the various clinically diagnosable eating disorders, but first I want to help you identify them with the top 5 signs that someone has an eating disorder. Now, number 1 is preoccupation with appearance. In this situation, you'll be looking for someone who frequently looks at themselves in the mirror and just seems to spend an inordinate amount of time. Now, I know a lot of teenagers are preoccupied with their appearance. You don't want to take any one of these single items by itself as a sign that someone has an eating disorder, but taken together, it may indicate that you should look into it. The second thing is someone who has lost a lot of weight, but still says they're fat and has an irrational fear of getting fat. I'm sure you've met people who lose a bunch of weight and they look fantastic, but they keep saying they want to lose more, and you're wondering, why are you exercising so much? Why are you still restricting your food? And you see that they have an irrational fear that they're going to get fat again. The third sign that someone has an eating disorder is someone who's frequently saying things like, boy, everything would be so great if only I could lose weight. Or, gosh, I would be so happy if only I could lose weight. These are people who associate their happiness and their life with whether or not they're heavy or not. And this is also another sign. The fourth thing to look for is someone who's very reluctant to eat in front of others or maybe picks at their food. Now, a lot of people will occasionally pick at their food, but what you're looking for here is someone who they haven't eaten for a while. Maybe you've been out most of the day with them, you didn't eat very much, you get back or you get to a restaurant and you order food and you're sitting there eating like crazy and they're kind of picking at it and you're wondering, hey, what's going on here? You should be hungry. That would be the fourth thing to look for in terms of a sign someone might have an eating disorder. The fifth thing is someone who goes into a restroom after eating. Now, there could be a variety of reasons they're going there. Maybe they are going to vomit, or maybe they are going to take a diet medication or a diuretic or go to the bathroom. They are going into the bathroom to make up for the fact that they have just eaten. If you see someone who always, as soon as a meal is over or as soon as a meal is about to be over, they're getting up and they're going to the restroom, it's just another sign to look for. So those are the top 5 things to look for. Now, when these signs are also combined with moodiness, spending a lot of time alone, reduced energy, secretive behavior, these are the things where the risk of an eating disorder would then be higher. Now, if things get even worse, if someone's in a latter stage or certainly at the stage of clinical diagnosis, you may see things like hair loss, skin problems, fainting spells, loss of muscle. This is where someone is definitely not getting enough energy intake. It's starting to impact their overall health, including skin and so forth. People who have lost so much weight that they actually start to begin losing muscle tissue. This is a time to be very concerning. So if you suspect someone has an eating disorder, it's best to talk to them about it and try to get them some help. It's very important to not be overly critical of it, and also don't look for quick solutions. If you see someone's like this, don't say to them, hey, just eat more, or hey, stop binge eating. It's not like that for them. This is a mental health disorder. They need help to work through it. Quick solutions that you suggest will actually be received very negatively and could make the problem worse. In addition to sitting down and talking to them, depending on their age and their situation, how well you know them, you may want to alert a parent or a teacher if you're a classmate of theirs, or if they're in a relationship, you may want to alert their partner. Finally, if you think you yourself are suffering from an eating disorder, or if it's someone close and you want to take action, you can call the National Eating Disorder Information Center. Check the number on the screen and also down below. So I've mentioned the top 5 signs of an eating disorder, but what are the clinically diagnosable eating disorders? Now, there are actually quite a few, and I've listed them all here, but the most common ones are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. And so I'm going to spend some time talking about these 3. Now, anorexia nervosa is probably the one that most people have heard of, and it has 3 main characteristics. The first characteristic is just not eating enough. These are people that just have restrictive food intake, and it's what psychologists call persistent energy intake restriction. A very fancy way of just saying you're not eating enough. The second thing that you'll see in anorexia nervosa is an irrational fear of gaining weight or becoming fat. This is someone who says, I'm going to eat these 5 carrot sticks, but I'm not going to dip them in ranch dressing because I'm afraid of becoming fat, and when they don't look actually fat. So this is an irrational fear. The third thing is someone who perceives themselves to be bigger or fatter than they are. And so this is someone who is, for example, maybe the same size as you, but they say they're bigger or fatter, or they're calling themselves obese when they're actually only 5 or 10 pounds overweight, or even they have a normal weight. So these are the 3 main things that you'll see in anorexia nervosa. Now within anorexia nervosa, there are actually 2 main types. There's a starving type. This is someone who primarily is restricting their food intake, and then there's a binging and purging types. So that's a quick overview of anorexia nervosa. The second one that I want to turn to is bulimia nervosa. Now some people have heard the term bulimia, and they also often think of people who binge eat and vomit. This definition has been revised somewhat, so let me take you through them. Now bulimia nervosa has 3 main characteristics. The first main characteristic is binge eating. I think we all know the term binge, meaning to do something excessively over a period of time, but this is someone who would have a much greater calorie intake in a short period of time than would be normal. For example, eating your entire day's worth of calories in a half hour or an hour, or even having 2 times a normal daily food intake in a very short period of time. So that's number 1. Number 1 characteristic of bulimia nervosa is binge eating. The second characteristic is behaviors to compensate for binge eating. Now the most common one people talk about is vomiting, but other behaviors include the use of laxatives, going on crash diets, taking diet pills, even excessive exercise, and so forth. Any behavior that is used to compensate for the binge eating would be the second characteristic. Now the third characteristic of bulimia nervosa is excessive self-evaluation related to body shape or weight. This is someone who perceives their value as being pretty much the same as their weight and their shape. So this is someone who's not happy unless they're thin, or is thinking of themselves as being wrong or dirty or fat or stupid based on their body shape and weight. So that's bulimia nervosa. And finally, the third one, so that's bulimia nervosa. And finally, the third thing I want to talk about is binge eating disorder. Now you might say, weren't we just talking about binge eating disorder? No, we were talking about bulimia nervosa, which includes binge eating. It includes compensatory behaviors. Binge eating disorder is different. This is when you have binge eating behaviors that occur recurrently without excessive use of compensatory behaviors. So in this scenario, you've got someone who eats a lot of food in a short period of time and then doesn't go and vomit, isn't taking diuretics, isn't using laxatives, isn't doing excessive exercise. So these individuals will typically have weight gain. So there are actually quite a few what we call feeding and eating disorders, and I've just gone through the 3 very common of those, and I hope that's beneficial. Now there's a related disorder that I often get asked about, and that's body dysmorphic disorder. And these eating disorders are sometimes related to body dysmorphic disorder, which is where someone becomes preoccupied with a perceived defect or flaw in a physical attribute. They might think their nose is too big, their hips are too wide, their hair is too curly, etc. And I'm actually going to get into more detail about body dysmorphic disorder in a future video. Finally, there's a very interesting combination of disorders that includes eating disorder along with body dysmorphic disorder and gender dysphoria disorder. And one of my favorite young YouTubers who speaks openly is Jade Elliott, whose channel is linked below. Jade experiences disorders like this and oftentimes in this combination along with depression. And once I discovered Jade, and I actually spent much of the night watching the entire series from beginning to end in a single night. It was a very enlightening and educational set of videos. So thanks, Jade, for that. Now, once again, eating disorders are very serious. And that's why I'm trying to make a video about top signs to look for. It does pose a risk of death if gone untreated. So if you believe you or someone you love has an eating disorder, I'll just ask you to get help quickly and try to intervene in any way you can. So I hope you found this video useful about eating disorders. And once again, thank you for watching Psych Sense, where we make sense of mental health. I'm Ken Mallon, your host, and I'll see you next time.